The great crystal dome of the Galactic Council floated in space like a giant jewel. Inside, 12 different alien species sat around a table that had seen 3,000 years of peace. Today, that peace was about to end. Ambassador Zektar clicked his insect-like claws against the smooth table. His compound eyes reflected the soft blue light that filled the chamber. Behind him, 1,000 other minds buzzed with the same thoughts. The hive mind species shared everything, every thought, every fear, every piece of information. Council members, Zektar began, his voice carrying the weight of his entire species. We have a problem. The other aliens turned their attention to him. Council Prime Velthara, a being made of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, pulsed with interest. Her light grew brighter as she focused on the speaker. "Show us," she said, her voice like music made of starlight. A hologram appeared above the table. It showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth. Around it, tiny dots of light moved in organized patterns. Ships. Hundreds of them. This species calls themselves humans, Zektar continued. 200 years ago, they could barely leave their own planet. Now look, the image changed. Star systems lit up one by one, showing the path of human expansion. Each new system glowed red as it came under human control. The pattern spread outward like spilled water, faster and faster with each passing year. War Commander Grix slammed his massive fist on the table. The reptilian warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in scales that had turned gray with age. His yellow eyes burned with anger. 47 systems, he growled, in just 2 centuries. Some of those worlds belong to us. Belonged, corrected Ambassador Isara of the snake-like Nagai. She coiled her long body tighter around her floating chair. The humans took them without asking permission, without even saying hello. Velthara's light flickered with concern. This is unusual. Every species that has reached the stars has come to us first. It is the way things have always been done. The table buzzed with agreement. For 3,000 years, the same pattern had repeated. A new species would develop faster than light travel. They would explore a few nearby systems. Then the council would make contact. The new species would be invited to the Great Station. They would sit at this very table and learn their place in the galaxy. Some species joined the council as full members. Others became protected territories. A few chose isolation but stayed within their assigned borders. All of them followed the rules. All of them knew their place, but not the humans. "What do we know about them?" asked Elder Morpheus of the Shapers. His body was a flowing mass of liquid metal that constantly changed shape. Today he looked almost human, perhaps to mock the species they discussed. Zektar's hive mind had been studying humans for months. The information they had gathered was disturbing. They are mammals, carbon-based. They live short lives, maybe 100 of their years at most. Their planet is divided into many different groups that fight each other constantly. "Primitive," snorted Grix, "probably still throwing rocks at each other." "No," Zektar said quietly. "That is what makes them dangerous. They fight each other, but they also work together. When they reached space, all their different groups joined into one government. They call it the Terran Federation." The image above the table changed again. Now it showed human ships. They were ugly things compared to the elegant vessels of council species, all sharp angles and heavy armor. They looked like they were built for war, not exploration. "Their technology is crude but effective," Zektar continued. "They use nuclear fusion for power. Kinetic weapons for fighting, simple but deadly. What worries my collective is how fast they build everything. They can turn an empty star system into a thriving colony in just 5 years. Council member Whispersong of the gas giant dwellers puffed out a cloud of colored vapor. Her species communicated through scent and chemical signals. The translation devices turned her thoughts into words. Perhaps they simply do not know the proper way to behave. We should teach them, guide them, as we have guided others. Velthara nodded, her crystalline form brightening. Yes, we will send them the traditional invitation. They will come here, learn our ways, and find their place in galactic society. But Grix was not satisfied. His warrior instincts told him something was wrong. What if they refuse? The chamber fell silent. In 3,000 years, no species had ever refused the council's invitation. It was unthinkable. The council represented order, wisdom, and peace. Who would turn away from such gifts? "They will not refuse," Velthara said with confidence. "No intelligent species would choose chaos over order. They will come." Zektar was not so sure. His collective had intercepted human communications. The things they said about independence and self-determination were concerning. But he kept these thoughts to himself for now. The council voted unanimously. They would send the traditional message to Earth. The humans would have one solar rotation to respond. They would send representatives to the Great Station. They would negotiate borders, accept council oversight, and join the galactic community. It was how things had always been done. The message was prepared with great care. It explained the council's authority over the galaxy. It outlined the benefits of membership. It made clear that this was not a request, but a requirement. All spacefaring species must answer to the council. As the message sped toward Earth through subspace, the council members returned to their normal business. Trade disputes between the crystalline entities and the Shapers, border adjustments for the expanding Nagai colonies, routine matters that had kept the galaxy peaceful for millennia. Only Grix remained troubled. He called up the battle reports from systems where humans had taken control. The takeovers had been swift and complete. Not a single human ship had been lost. The previous occupants had simply been gone. Not killed, not enslaved, just relocated elsewhere. It was efficient. It was bloodless. It was terrifying. A warrior knew the difference between conquest and expansion. Conquest required defeating an enemy. Expansion just required taking empty space. But what the humans did was neither. They took occupied space and made it empty, then filled it with their own people. Grix pulled up tactical analyses of human ship movements. Their fleets moved in patterns that made no sense according to traditional military doctrine. They did not see glorious single combat. They did not honor ancient rules of engagement. They moved like a swarm. The thought chilled him. Swarms were something you found in nature. Insects overwhelming their prey through numbers and coordination. Not the behavior of an intelligent species. Not the behavior of people who could be reasoned with. But surely Velthara was right. When the humans learned about the council, they would see the wisdom of cooperation. They would understand that their rapid expansion was causing problems. They would slow down, negotiate borders, and find their proper place in the galaxy. They had to. Because if they did not, Grix realized, the galaxy was about to face something it had not seen in 3,000 years. War. The message reached Earth. Now they would wait for the humans to respond. 1 solar rotation, 26 standard hours. Surely it would be enough time for the humans to see reason. The clock began to count down. 26 hours later, the Galactic Council chamber was full of tension. The great crystal dome hummed with nervous energy as 12 species waited for humanity's response. Some members paced in their floating chairs. Others meditated in their preferred positions. All of them watched the communication array with growing anticipation. Council Prime Velthara's crystalline form pulsed with a steady blue light. She had been certain the humans would respond with the proper respect. Every species always did. The Council represented 3,000 years of wisdom and peace. No rational beings would reject such an offer. The deadline approaches, announced the station's artificial intelligence. Its voice echoed through the chamber in 12 different languages simultaneously. Ambassador Zektar's compound eyes reflected the countdown display. Behind him, his hive mind buzzed with nervous energy. They had been analyzing every piece of data about humans they could find. The results were inconsistent. Humans seemed to value something they called freedom above almost everything else, even above survival sometimes. War Commander Grix stood at his full 8-foot height, his clawed hands gripping the edge of the council table. His military instincts screamed that something was wrong. The humans had taken too long to respond. A proper diplomatic delegation would have answered within hours, not waited until the last possible moment. Perhaps they are preparing a grand entrance, suggested Whispersong, releasing a cloud of hopeful pink vapor. Young species often want to impress us with elaborate ceremonies. Elder Morpheus shifted his liquid metal body into a more compact form. Or perhaps they are afraid. Meeting the council for the first time can be overwhelming. They should be afraid, muttered Grix under his breath. The countdown reached 0. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness in the chamber focused on the communication array. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Velthara's light brightened with satisfaction. You see, they have responded appropriately. Display the message. The hologram above the council table flickered to life. Instead of the expected diplomatic envoy or elaborate transmission, a simple image appeared. A middle-aged human woman in a dark blue uniform stood behind a plain metal desk. No decorations, no ceremony, no signs of respect for the Great Council. The woman had short gray hair and calm brown eyes. Her uniform bore symbols that Zektar's collective identified as military insignia. This was not a diplomat. This was a soldier. "Greetings," the woman said in a clear, steady voice. "I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation Defense Force. I am responding to your recent communication." Grix leaned forward. The human's posture was all wrong. She stood like a warrior addressing equals, not a supplicant begging for favor. Where was the fear? Where was the awe that should come from meeting the galactic powers? "The Terran Federation has reviewed your invitation to appear before the Galactic Council," Admiral Chen continued. "After careful consideration by our elected leaders, we must respectfully decline." The chamber erupted. War Commander Grix roared in disbelief, his massive fist crashing down on the council table with enough force to crack the crystal surface. Whisper Song released a cloud of shocked yellow vapor that made the air shimmer. Elder Morpheus's liquid form rippled like a disturbed pond. Only Velthera remained perfectly still, her light flickering between confusion and anger. "This is impossible," she whispered, her musical voice now sharp with disbelief. "No species has ever refused our invitation. Not once in 3,000 years. But Admiral Chen was not finished. Her image continued speaking as chaos erupted around the council table. "We understand that your organization has maintained order in this galaxy for many centuries. We respect your achievements and have no desire for conflict. However, the Terran Federation governs itself. We do not accept external authority over our citizens or our territories." Grix's yellow eyes blazed with fury. "External authority? We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. Furthermore," the human admiral continued, seemingly unaware of the outrage she was causing, "we reject your territorial claims over systems we have colonized. These worlds were uninhabited when our settlers arrived. We recognize no prior claim that was not actively maintained through occupation." Ambassador Zektar's hive mind worked frantically to process this information. The humans were not just refusing to negotiate. They were rejecting the entire foundation of galactic law. 3,000 years of carefully maintained border agreements, territorial claims, and resource allocation treaties meant nothing to them. "They cannot do this," buzzed one of the smaller council members, a crystalline entity from the outer rim. "The legal framework of the galaxy depends on our authority being recognized." "Legal framework?" Admiral Chen's image seemed to respond, though of course she could not hear them. "The Terran Federation recognizes only those laws we have agreed to follow. We have made no such agreements with your council." Velthara's light flared bright red. For the first time in centuries, the Council Prime was truly angry. "Do they not understand what they are rejecting? We offer them protection, trade partnerships, technological exchange, peaceful coexistence with dozens of advanced civilizations. We are prepared to engage in trade and diplomatic relations with any species that wishes to deal with us as equals," the Admiral said, as if reading Velthara's mind. "However, we will not submit to foreign governance or accept restrictions on our expansion into unoccupied territory." The message was ending. Admiral Chen's final words were delivered with the same calm confidence that had marked her entire statement. "The Terran Federation wishes you well in your future endeavors. We hope that our peoples can coexist peacefully in this vast galaxy. However, we govern ourselves and we will continue to do so. That is not negotiable. End transmission." The hologram vanished, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. For long moments, no one spoke. The reality of what had just happened was too large to immediately comprehend. A species had looked at the accumulated wisdom and power of 3,000 years and simply said no. War Commander Grix was the first to break the silence. "This is an act of war," he snarled. "They have rejected our authority. They have claimed territory that belongs to council members. They have insulted the dignity of every species in this chamber." Perhaps there was a translation error," suggested Whisper Song hopefully. "Maybe they did not understand what we were offering." Zektar's collective analyzed the transmission again, checking every word against their database of human languages. No translation error. Their meaning was clear. "They refuse to acknowledge our authority." Elder Morpheus rippled with agitation. This threatens everything we have built. If one species can reject the Council with impunity, others may follow. The entire galactic order could collapse. Velthara's light slowly shifted from red back to blue as she regained her composure. But underneath the calm exterior, something had changed. The certainty that had guided her for centuries was cracking. They cannot be allowed to set this precedent, she said quietly. Other young species are watching. If they see that the Council can be defied without consequences, then we show them there are consequences, Grix finished. His hand moved to the weapon at his side, an ancient blade that had tasted the blood of a dozen species. We remind the galaxy why the Council's word is law. But Zektar raised a claw for attention. Before we act in anger, we should consider what we know about these humans. They are not like other species. They do not think like we do. They think like primitives, spat Grix, like animals defending territory. Exactly, Zektar said quietly. And what happens when you corner an animal? The chamber fell silent again as the implication sank in. A cornered animal did not negotiate. It did not surrender. It fought with everything it had, no matter the odds. And the humans had just told the most powerful organization in the galaxy that they would not be cornered. Velthara made her decision. Send a message to all Council fleets. Begin mobilization procedures. If the humans will not respect our authority through diplomacy, they will learn to respect it through strength. As the orders went out across the galaxy, none of the Council members noticed the final piece of data in Admiral Chen's transmission. In the background of her office, barely visible on her desk, lay a stack of reports marked with a single word that would have chilled them to their cores if they had understood its significance. War. 3 days after the human rejection, the Galactic Council was no longer united. The great crystal chamber that had witnessed 3,000 years of peaceful debate now echoed with angry voices and conflicting demands. War Commander Grix stood at the center of the chamber, his massive form towering over a holographic display of the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies spreading like an infection across space that had once been orderly and controlled. Look at this, he roared, his clawed hand slashing through the hologram. While we debate, they expand. 3 more systems taken in the last 72 hours. They are not slowing down. They are speeding up. Ambassador Zektar's hive mind buzzed with nervous energy. The collective had been analyzing human behavior patterns since the rejection, and what they found was deeply troubling. Humans did not respond to threats the way other species did. When threatened, most intelligent beings sought compromise or retreat. Humans seemed to prepare for war. War Commander Grix speaks truth, Zektar clicked. Our intelligence shows massive human fleet movements. They are not acting like a species that fears consequences. They are acting like a species that expects conflict. Across the chamber, Whisper Song released a cloud of pale blue vapor that smelled of rain and sorrow. There must be another way. Violence has not touched this galaxy for millennia. Surely we can find words that will reach them. Elder Morpheus rippled in his liquid metal form, constantly shifting between shapes as his emotions fluctuated. Words, they rejected our words. They rejected our authority. They rejected 3,000 years of galactic law. What words are left? Council Prime Velthara pulsed with frustrated energy. Her crystalline shell contained power that could level mountains. But what good was power against a species that refused to acknowledge it? She had spent centuries believing that wisdom and authority were the same thing. The humans had shattered that belief in a single transmission. We must consider our options carefully, she said, trying to maintain the dignity of her office. The Council has 3 paths before us. She gestured, and the holographic display changed to show 3 different military formations. The first was a massive fleet of Council warships arranged in battle formation. The second showed Council forces retreating to heavily fortified core worlds. The third displayed diplomatic ships reaching out to neutral species. We can crush this rebellion before it spreads, Velthara continued. We can retreat to our core territories and abandon the outer systems. Or we can seek allies among the younger species to contain human expansion. The chamber split immediately into 3 factions. Grix slammed his fist on the table again, causing small cracks to spread through the crystal surface. There is only one option. We show them the price of defying the Council. My fleets can reduce their colonies to ash within a month. Several Council members roared their agreement. The Saurian military had not seen real combat in centuries, but they had trained for this moment. Their ships were technological marvels. Their weapons could crack planets. Their warriors had been bred for battle, but other voices rose in opposition. Violence will only prove their point, Whisper Song protested. They claim we are tyrants imposing our will through force. If we attack them, we become exactly what they say we are. The diplomatic faction included some of the oldest and wisest species in the council. They had seen empires rise and fall through the millennia. They knew that power built on fear alone was fragile. There must be intermediaries, suggested Ambassador Ysara of the Serpentine Nagai. Her species had mastered the art of subtle persuasion over thousands of years. Someone they trust. Someone who can explain the benefits of cooperation. The third faction, led by the crystalline entities from the Outer Rim, wanted nothing to do with the humans at all. Retreat to the core systems, urged Counselor Hexara. Let the humans have the frontier worlds. Build walls they cannot cross. Wait for them to destroy themselves as violent species always do. The debate raged for hours. Old alliances strained under the pressure of conflicting philosophies. Species that had worked together for centuries suddenly found themselves on opposite sides of fundamental questions about the nature of authority and the price of peace. Meanwhile, Zektar's hive mind continued gathering intelligence about human activities. What they discovered would have shocked the arguing council members if they had been listening. The humans were not just expanding randomly. Every move they made seemed calculated to secure strategic resources and defensive positions. They built not just colonies but fortresses. They established not just trade routes but supply lines. Most disturbing of all, they were building ships at a rate that defied logic. Human industrial capacity was beyond anything the Council had seen. They could turn asteroids into shipyards, planets into factories, entire star systems into military production centers, and they were doing it all openly, as if they wanted the galaxy to see their preparations. Council members, Zektar tried to interrupt the debate. There is urgent intelligence you must hear. But the three factions were too busy arguing to listen. Grix was describing his battle plans in vivid detail, explaining how Saurian shock troops would storm human colonies. Whisper Song was outlining diplomatic approaches that might appeal to human psychology. The isolationists were calculating how many systems they would need to abandon to create an effective buffer zone. None of them wanted to hear that their assumptions about human capabilities might be wrong. In a secure military facility 3 sectors away, War Commander Grix's most trusted analysts were running computer simulations of a war against humanity. The results were classified at the highest levels, seen only by Grix himself and his inner circle. The first simulation assumed human technology was equivalent to Council standards. Result: Saurian victory in 6 months with moderate casualties. The second simulation factored in human industrial capacity and production rates. Result: Saurian victory in 18 months with heavy casualties. The third simulation included analysis of human tactical doctrines gleaned from intercepted military communications. Result: uncertain outcome. Extremely heavy casualties on both sides. The fourth simulation incorporated the one piece of data that terrified Grix's analysts more than anything else. Humans had never fought a war they intended to lose. Unlike other species that engaged in limited conflicts with specific goals, humans seemed to approach every war as if their survival depended on total victory. That simulation had been run 12 times. The result was always the same: galactic war with no clear victor and casualties in the billions. Grix had classified the results so highly that only he could access them. He would not share them with the Council, because doing so would undermine support for the military option. But late at night, when his warrior's pride was quiet, he wondered if the humans had rejected the Council's authority because they knew something the Council did not. Back in the Council chamber, Velthara finally called for order. The debate had accomplished nothing except to reveal how deeply divided they had become. "We will vote," she announced. "Each faction will present their proposal formally. The Council will decide our course of action by majority rule, as it has always been." But even as she spoke, Velthara knew that the old ways might not be enough. The Council had maintained peace through consensus and shared authority. When that authority was rejected, what remained? As the three factions prepared their formal proposals, a new message arrived from human space. It was not from Admiral Chen this time, but from someone identified only as Director of Colonial Affairs. The message was brief and to the point. The Terran Federation notes with concern the mobilization of Council military forces. We wish to make clear that any attack on human colonies or citizens will be considered an act of war and will be responded to accordingly. We remain open to diplomatic relations between equals, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. The message included detailed intelligence about Council fleet movements, ship classifications, and strategic positions. The humans had been watching everything. They knew exactly what forces were being prepared against them, and they were not backing down. War Commander Grix read the message with growing respect for his potential enemies. They fought like warriors even in their diplomacy. State your position clearly, demonstrate your strength, and leave no doubt about your intentions. Perhaps the humans were not primitives after all. Perhaps they were something much more dangerous, equals who refused to be treated as inferiors. The vote would be held tomorrow. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. But in human space, the decision had already been made. Admiral Chen stood before the Terran Federation Council, presenting her recommendations for what she called Operation Thunderstorm. The galactic powers are about to learn, she told the assembled leaders, that humanity does not negotiate from a position of weakness, ever. The council chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. They were about to find out if 3,000 years of galactic peace was worth preserving, or if it was time for a new order to emerge from the chaos of war. The breaking point came at Kepler 442b, a world that 3 different council species claimed as their own. The planet hung in space like a blue-green jewel, its 2 moons casting silver light across oceans that had never known intelligent life. Until today. Garrison Commander Theklar of the Saurian Imperial Guard stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, watching long-range sensors detect the approaching human fleet. His yellow eyes narrowed as he counted the ships. 37 vessels, all heavily armed. This was not an exploration mission. They dare to challenge us here? He hissed to his second-in-command. This world belongs to the Saurian Empire. We have claimed it for 2 centuries. Should we contact the Council, Commander? Asked his aide, a younger Saurian whose scales still held the bright green of youth. Theklar's tail lashed with contempt. For what? To ask permission to defend our own territory? We follow the ancient laws of challenge. If they want this world, they must face me in single combat. It was the way things had always been done. When 2 powers contested the same territory, their champions would meet in ritual combat. The winner would claim the prize. The loser would withdraw with honor intact, civilized, orderly, peaceful. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Theklar immediately opened a communication channel, following protocols that were older than human civilization. Attention human vessels, he broadcast, his voice carrying the formal tones of ancient tradition. You have entered space claimed by the Saurian Empire. I am Garrison Commander Theklar, hereditary guardian of this system. If you wish to contest our claim, name your champion. We will settle this matter according to the laws of honorable combat. For long minutes there was no response. Theklar began to wonder if the humans understood the challenge. Perhaps their translation systems were primitive. Perhaps they needed time to choose their greatest warrior. When the response finally came, it was not what he expected. This is Captain Maria Santos of the TFS New Horizon, a female voice replied. We do not recognize your claim to this system. The planet shows no signs of settlement or active occupation. We are proceeding with our colonization mission. Theklar's eyes blazed with outrage. They were ignoring the challenge completely. This was not just disrespectful, it was impossible. No species had ever simply ignored a formal challenge. You misunderstand, he replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. This is not a negotiation. This is a challenge. Choose your champion or withdraw from this system immediately. Negative, Captain Santos responded. We do not engage in single combat to determine territorial claims. If you wish to contest our presence here, you are welcome to try. But we have work to do. The communication ended. Theklar stared at his instruments in disbelief. The human ships were already moving toward the planet, completely ignoring his challenge. Some were heading for the northern continent. Others aimed for the largest landmass in the southern hemisphere. They were not preparing for battle. They were preparing for colonization. This is madness, his aide whispered. They cannot simply ignore the laws of challenge. But that was exactly what they were doing. As Thekla watched in growing fury, the human fleet split into 7 separate groups. Each group headed for a different continent. They were not going to fight for the planet. They were going to take it. All ships, Thekla roared into his communicator. Battle stations. If they will not honor the challenge, we will remind them why the Saurian Empire is feared across the galaxy. His fleet moved to intercept the lead human ships. 12 massive Saurian dreadnoughts against 37 human vessels. The numbers favored the humans, but Saurian ships were larger, more heavily armed, and crewed by warriors who had trained for battle since birth. The first exchange of fire should have been devastating. Saurian plasma cannons, each capable of melting an asteroid, opened fire on the approaching humans. But the human ships did not behave like any enemy Thekla had ever faced. Instead of forming a battle line and returning fire, the human vessels scattered like a school of fish avoiding a predator. They split into smaller groups, each taking a different approach vector. Some dove below the plane of battle. Others climbed high above it. A third group actually retreated only to swing around and attack from behind. What are they doing? Thekla demanded. Why do they not stand and fight? His tactical officer, a veteran of a dozen honor duels, could only shake his head. This is not how space combat works, Commander. They should be forming lines of battle. They should be engaging our strongest ships with their strongest ships. But the humans had never read the ancient rules of warfare. They fought like pack hunters, not like knights. Smaller human ships swarmed around individual Saurian vessels, staying too close for the massive plasma cannons to target effectively. While the dreadnoughts tried to swat these annoying gnats, the main human fleet continued toward the planet. Theklar's flagship came under attack from 6 human vessels at once. They moved in perfect coordination, one ship drawing his fire while another struck at his engines. When he turned to face that threat, a third ship attacked his weapon systems. Shields at 60%, his aide reported. Hull breaches on deck 7 and 12. Sir, they are not trying to destroy us. They are trying to disable us, it was true. The human attacks were precise, surgical. They targeted engines, weapons, and communication systems. They were not fighting to kill. They were fighting to win. The battle that should have lasted hours was over in less than 90 minutes. One by one, the Saurian ships found themselves crippled, their engines dead, their weapons offline. They were not destroyed, but they were helpless. Thekla sat in his command chair, watching his tactical display show red damage indicators across his entire fleet. Not a single Saurian ship remained combat-capable, but only 3 human vessels had been destroyed, and those seemed to have been deliberate sacrifices to protect the main fleet. Sir, his communications officer reported quietly, the humans are requesting to speak with you. Captain Santos's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but not triumphant. If anything, she seemed sad. Commander Thekla, she said formally, your ships are disabled but intact. Your crews are alive. We have no wish to kill fellow sentients, but we will not be prevented from settling an empty world. Empty? Thekla raged. This world belongs to the Saurian Empire. Where are your settlements? Santos asked quietly. Where are your people? Your cities? Your farms? You have placed a beacon in orbit and called it Conquest. We have brought 50,000 colonists ready to build homes and raise families. Which of us has a greater claim to this world? Before Thekla could answer, his sensor officer gasped in shock. Commander! The planet. Look at the planet. The main screen shifted to show Kepler 442b's surface. In the 6 hours since the space battle had begun, the humans had not been idle. Landing craft were already on the ground. Construction vehicles were clearing landing zones. Prefabricated buildings were being assembled with industrial efficiency. In 6 hours, the humans had established 7 different colony sites on 7 different continents. Each site was already growing, expanding, becoming permanent. What should have taken months was happening in real time. This is impossible, Thekla whispered. No species colonizes this quickly. We do, Santos said simply. Commander, we offer you safe passage to the edge of the system. Your ships will be repaired enough to reach the nearest Saurian base. But this world is now part of the Terran Federation. As Thekla watched, more human ships arrived in the system. Not warships, but cargo vessels filled with supplies, equipment, and more colonists. The humans had not come here to fight a battle. They had come here to take a planet, and the battle had been merely an obstacle to overcome. You have dishonored the ancient laws, he said weakly. We follow our own laws, Santos replied. And our first law is that humanity governs itself. Goodbye, Commander. I hope our peoples can find peace in the future. The transmission ended. Teklar's fleet limped out of the system, leaving the humans in possession of a world that had been Saurian territory for 2 centuries. The news reached the Galactic Council within hours. War Commander Grix received the report in his private chambers, reading it 3 times before he believed what had happened. The humans had not just won a battle. They had made the entire concept of honorable challenge irrelevant. They had shown that rapid colonization could defeat ancient territorial claims. They had proven that old laws meant nothing to a species that wrote its own rules. But most terrifying of all, they had done it without hatred or cruelty. They had disabled the Saurian fleet without destroying it. They had claimed the planet without massacring its previous claimants. They had acted like professionals doing a job. Grix sat in his chamber for a long time, staring at the tactical analysis of the battle. The humans had fought like nothing he had ever seen. They had treated war not as a glorious contest between champions, but as a problem to be solved as efficiently as possible. He thought about the simulations his analysts had run. All those calculations about honor and glory and traditional warfare, all of them were wrong. The humans did not fight wars. They solved them. And now they had shown the galaxy that 3,000 years of tradition could be swept aside in a single afternoon by a species that refused to follow. The Beta Centauri system had never seen such a gathering of military might. 7 different council fleets hung in space around the system's gas giant, their ships forming a wall of metal and energy that stretched across millions of kilometers. This was the largest alliance in galactic history, brought together by a single purpose: to stop human expansion once and for all. War Commander Grix stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching the combined fleets take their positions. Saurian dreadnoughts formed the center of the battle line, their massive guns ready to deliver devastating firepower. Crystalline energy ships floated in perfect formation, their weapons capable of turning matter into pure light. The insectoid hive mind vessels moved like a swarm, their collective consciousness controlling hundreds of ships as one giant organism. 7 fleets, Grix murmured to himself. 3,000 ships, 10 million crew members, the greatest military force ever assembled. His aide, a young Saurian officer named Krath, nodded with enthusiasm. The humans cannot stand against such power, Commander. They will see our strength and surrender. Grix said nothing. He had read the reports from Kepler 442b a dozen times. The humans had fought unlike any enemy he had ever studied. They did not seem to care about honor, tradition, or the proper way to conduct warfare. They simply won. But surely even humans could not stand against the combined might of 7 civilizations. The mathematics were clear. The humans had perhaps 200 ships in the entire system. The Council had brought 3,000. Sir, the sensor officer called out, we are detecting human ships emerging from the gas giant's rings. Grix turned to his tactical display. At first he saw only a handful of ships, small frigates and destroyers, nothing that could threaten a dreadnought. But as he watched, more ships appeared. And more, how many? He demanded, counting. 50, 100, 200. The sensor officer's voice grew strained. Sir, I count over 800 human vessels. They were hiding in the planet's ring system. 800 ships, still outnumbered almost 4 to 1, but far more than intelligence had suggested the humans could field. Grix felt a cold knot form in his stomach. If human intelligence about Council forces had been wrong, what else had they gotten wrong? All ships, he broadcast to the Allied fleet. Prepare for battle. Remember, we fight not just for victory but for the principle of galactic order itself. The human fleet arranged itself in a formation that made no sense to Grix's experienced eye. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, they scattered throughout the system in small groups. Some ships dove toward the inner planets. Others climbed high above the orbital plane. A large group seemed to be heading directly for the system's star. What are they doing? Demanded Admiral Veltara of the Crystalline Fleet. Her energy form pulsed with confusion. This formation has no tactical value. They are spreading their forces too thin. But before Grix could respond, something happened that changed everything. The system's star began to flicker. It was subtle at first, just a slight variation in the solar output that would have been missed if not for the advanced sensors of the Council fleets. But as they watched in growing horror, the flickering became more pronounced. "Impossible," whispered the hive mind collective through their communication link. "Stars do not flicker. Stars are stable." Admiral Chen's voice suddenly filled the communication channels of every ship in the system. Her transmission came from a command ship near the star itself, impossibly close to the burning nuclear furnace. "Council fleets," she said in her calm, steady voice. "You have entered the Beta Centauri system with hostile intent. You have brought weapons of mass destruction into human space. You have threatened our citizens and our colonies." Grix tried to respond, but Chen continued without pause. "We gave you the opportunity for peaceful coexistence. You chose war instead. Very well. But understand this. Humanity does not fight limited wars. We do not engage in symbolic conflicts. When we fight to win completely and permanently." The star flickered again, more violently this time. Grix's science officer turned to him with terror in his eyes. "Commander," the scientist whispered, "they have destabilized the star. If it goes nova," the implications hit Grix like a physical blow. A nova would destroy everything in the system. All the council fleets, all the human ships, the planets, everything. The humans were willing to commit mutual suicide rather than accept defeat. "This is madness," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You will destroy yourselves as well." "Yes," Admiral Chen replied simply. "That is what makes this weapon effective. We are prepared to die for our freedom. Are you prepared to die for your authority?" The question hung in space like a challenge. Around the Allied fleet, Grix could hear confusion and fear in the communications between different ships. The crystalline beings pulsed with uncertainty. The hive mind buzzed with conflicting thoughts. This was not how wars were supposed to be fought. "You cannot be serious," Veltara transmitted. "No rational species would destroy itself to win a battle." "We are not trying to win a battle," Chen responded. "We are establishing a principle. Humanity will not be conquered. Not by you, not by anyone. If the choice is between freedom and extinction, we choose extinction." But then something unexpected happened. Instead of pressing their advantage, the human fleet began to move in a different pattern. The ships that had been heading for the inner planets suddenly changed course. The groups that had scattered across the system began to converge on specific targets. Grix realized with growing horror what he was seeing. The humans had not been arranging themselves randomly. Every ship movement had been calculated. They had been positioning themselves for a coordinated strike against the Council fleet's most vulnerable points. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he shouted. But it was too late. The human attack came from 12 different directions at once. Small, fast ships struck at the communication arrays of the large dreadnoughts, cutting off coordination between the Allied forces. Medium-sized cruisers targeted the engine systems of the crystalline vessels, leaving them unable to maneuver. Squadrons of fighters swarmed the hive mind ships, disrupting their collective consciousness with precisely placed electronic warfare attacks. This was not the honorable battle Grix had prepared for. This was systematic dismantlement. The humans fought like surgeons, cutting away specific capabilities while leaving their enemies alive but helpless. Within 2 hours, the largest military force in galactic history was scattered and broken, not destroyed. The humans seemed determined to avoid unnecessary killing, but completely defeated. Ship after ship reported disabled engines, failed weapons, or severed communications. Grix found himself alone on his bridge, his flagship drifting powerless through space. His crew was alive, but his ship was dead. Around him, the wreckage of galactic military might floated like broken toys. Admiral Chen's image appeared on his screen one final time. "War Commander Grix," she said, and there was something like respect in her voice. "You fought bravely for what you believed in. I can honor that even if I cannot agree with it." "How?" Grix asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How did you defeat us so completely?" Chen smiled sadly. "You brought 3,000 ships to fight a battle. We brought 800 ships to win a war. There is a difference." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of history. "For 3,000 years, your council has maintained peace through the threat of force, but you forgot that threats only work against people who fear death more than they value freedom. Humanity has never been that kind of people." The transmission ended, but the star continued to flicker ominously. Even in victory, the humans maintained their ultimate threat. The message was clear. This would be the outcome of any future war as well. Over the following days, Rescue ships arrived to collect the survivors of the Council fleets. The humans provided assistance, medical aid, and safe passage back to Council space. They offered no terms, demanded no surrender, claimed no territory. They simply wanted the Council to leave and never return. 3 weeks later, the surviving Council members met in their crystal chamber for the last time in its original form. Only 7 species remained. 5 had withdrawn from the Council entirely, unwilling to risk another confrontation with humanity. Council Prime Velthara, her crystalline form dimmed by defeat and loss, spoke the words that formally ended 3,000 years of galactic dominion. "We offer the humans what we should have offered from the beginning," she said quietly. "A seat at our table as equals, a voice in galactic affairs, a partnership instead of dominion." The invitation was sent to Earth the same day. It was polite, respectful, and came with no conditions or demands. Just an offer to talk as equals about how their peoples might coexist in the vast galaxy they shared. Admiral Chen's response arrived exactly 24 hours later. The message was brief, but it would be remembered as long as civilizations existed in the galaxy. The Terran Federation thanks the Council for their offer of equal partnership. After careful consideration, we must respectfully decline. We govern ourselves.